Your hair's so cute with your bangs.
Thank you.
Okay, where are you? There you are. Make host. Okay, it's all over to you.
All right. Is it sharing for you?
Yep, just hit the presentation button on the PowerPoint. Yep.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so first off, thank you so much for joining me to talk about the VI-SPDAT. I also want to congratulate you on your service, starting your service, and I'm just excited for you to have a great year. And yeah, so like I said, I'm going to talk about the VI-SPDAT, and my name is Jenny Andrews. So a little bit about me. I started as the Housing Navigator here at HHCK in February. Before that, I served as an AmeriCorps member for 2 years, from 2017 to 2019, and that was at Gateway House in Moorhead, Kentucky, but I was with Homes for All, like you guys. I was born in Kentucky, Moorhead, Kentucky, and I recently moved to Versailles, the purpose being because I got the job here in Frankfurt, so that's new and exciting. I live there with my 2 dogs, my husband, his best friend, his dog, and cat. So there's a lot in our family, and we love it. I graduated from Moorhead State with a bachelor's in psychology and philosophy. And my birthday's next week, so I'll be 26 on Thursday. In my free time, I like to spend time with my family, my dogs, play video games, decorate my new house, watch reality television, and travel. Not really travel right now, but when I can, I'm definitely going to jump on that. Okay, so I put some pictures up here on to show you a little bit into my life. So those are my beautiful dogs. And yeah, those are my beautiful dogs. That's all you need to know. Okay, so what is the VI-SPDAT? If you set in on Cassie's presentation before mine, you may have heard a little bit about it. So the SPDAT is the Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Pre-Screen Tool, and the VI is a Vulnerability Index. So, sorry, just a second. I'm going to move this over a little bit so I can see my slides. Okay, so the SPDAT is an evidence-informed approach to assessing an individual's or family's acuity. The tool, across multiple components, prioritizes who to serve next and why, while also identifying the areas in the person or family's life where support is most likely necessary in order to avoid housing instability. The VI-SPDAT helps identify who should be recommended for housing and support intervention, while moving the discussion just from who's eligible to who's eligible and in the greatest need. So the SPDAT is an assessment tool, while the VI-SPDAT is a survey that anyone can complete to help prioritize clients. So what all does that mean? Basically, in its assessment to help understand the needs of an individual or family and place them on a prioritization list for housing to minimize their housing instability, to really avoid that. So prioritization means when you're placed on the list, you're not going on last place. That's really important. You're placing where your need is. So that's what the VI-SPDAT does. It is a tool to assess where your need is. So we like to talk about how it's like an emergency room. You're going to help those who need it the most first. Okay, so as far as the assessment, there's 3 different types. So that's for a single adult, a family, or youth. So for single, it's anybody who's 25 or older that have no children in the household. For a family, it's a single adult, so 25 or older with children in the household. And for youth, it's 18 to 24. And I just attached links here for you all to look at. I'm not sure if, I think these presentations are being sent out to you guys so you can look at these and have easy access to these, but I'm sure that your service site, you'll be seeing these very soon, especially if you're doing case management, because you'll most likely be doing this assessment. So those are the different ones that you can look at. I will talk about some of the questions that are on it. So you'll be able to kind of see what those look like. So no matter if you're doing a family, a single, or a youth, you'll want to start with an open script, and that will consist of the following. So you want to tell them the purpose of the VI-SPDAT. So with our agency, the purpose that we do it is to put it on a coordinated entry list. And that is probably what the purpose will be for you guys also. And so you'll want to open up and let them know that. You'll also want to tell them that it should take about 7 to 15 minutes, especially prepping them the time frame. It will allow for quicker answers, straightforward answers, and getting through the assessment as quickly as possible. And that may sound cold, that may sound bad, but really what you're trying to do is just getting those yes or no answers on that, and to be honest as possible. There needs to not be much thought into them, really. They just need to be honest and straightforward. So you'll want to let them know the time frame, and then also let them know, hey, it's only yes or no answers. Excuse me. There are occasional, there's a couple questions on there that do talk about time frame. So those are the other ones that are just very rare. That's not yes or no. Any question can be skipped at any time, or you can stop the assessment at any time. So I like to prep, hey, if you feel uncomfortable, if you want to skip over this question, or if you want to stop the assessment, that's okay too. But it is good to remind them that completing the assessment will allow them to get the most accurate place and score for them. You want to tell them where the information is being stored. So for us, it's with the KYHMIS, and that's probably what it will be for you all too. What that stands for is Kentucky Homelessness Management Information Systems. And so you will have to do a release form to be stored in there. You'll want to tell them the importance of being honest. And the reason, I know that sounds really silly, but the reason that you want to tell them that is because the types of questions that are on this could make them feel like they should lie or not tell you, because then it may be like, well, I'm not eligible. This will steer where they won't want to house me. But if you just prep them and tell them first that that's not going to disqualify them, and that's not what the purpose of it is not to get more information out of them, but rather just allowing information to be able to score correctly. If they don't understand a question, more information can be given. Sorry guys, I'm really cold in here, I'm kind of shaking. Okay, so you'll want to get familiar with the questions. So this is really important, going back to the couple slides over, to really look over them, read through them, and understand them before giving them out. So you'll want to read over the assessment before completing one with a client. You definitely would not want to feel uncomfortable before giving an assessment. If you're uncomfortable and you're asking those types of questions, it could make the client uncomfortable and make them feel like they can't answer honestly or even want to do the assessment. The assessment can feel invasive, so make sure you prep that as well. And just let them know, hey, I'm not the enemy, like I was saying before. You're not the enemy, you're not trying to get things out of them, but rather just allowing honesty and no judgment for them to answer those things honestly. So just as an example, before I had really felt comfortable doing assessments, I think you could tell that I was uncomfortable when I was doing it. I had someone say, hey, you're trying to trick me. It was some questions about alcohol abuse, and they were uncomfortable answering those questions to me because I think that there was a history, so they didn't want to get in trouble or feel disqualified from that. So prepping them and allowing them all the information at first is really helpful before doing the assessment with them. So something that you could do is practice with your staff at your service site in order to help you feel comfortable and get through the assessment at least once or a couple times before doing it with somebody. Okay. So along the lines of getting familiar with the questions, you'll want to reword questions for context. So like I was saying, there were some questions on there regarding time. So there's a question that says in the past 3 years or in the last 6 months. You can put those into perspective So for the past 3 years, you can say, well, since 2017, or in the last 6 months since February. And sometimes it's even helpful if you count backwards. So this is August, well, July, June, and if you go backwards, it allows the individual and the client that you're talking to kind of understand that time. People who have, that are experiencing homelessness and if they've been outside or in their car, they're not looking at a calendar, their time may be a little bit different thought process than what we see. So it's a lot easier and better to get more accurate information to kind of put it in a way like that, August, July, June, so that they can understand. So I just wanted to put a couple, some of the questions that are on there so that you can understand, and then of course you can look at them on your own time that I put on the slides before this. So a couple questions that are on there is, have you been attacked or beaten up since you become homeless? Do you ever do things that may be considered risky, like exchange sex for money, run drugs for someone, have unprotected sex with someone you don't know, share a needle or anything like that? And you can see that that question is very invasive. So you would want full honesty in a comfortable environment for somebody to be able to answer that question. Are you currently able to take care of your basic needs like bathing, changing clothes, using the restroom, getting food and clean water, and other things like that? Are there any medications that a doctor said you should be taking that for whatever reason you're not taking? So those are the samples of some of the questions that are on there. And of course, if it's those are for single adults, for families, it's have you or anyone in your family? Do you or anyone in your family? So there's a lot of the same questions, but for family members, there's more questions added on that are geared towards the children that are in the household. Okay, so it's important to understand that you are the assessor. You will be writing down the answers, or if you're putting it straight into the KYHMIS system, this isn't something that you'll be just giving the paper or allowing them to put it into the system. You'll be asking the questions and putting down the answers. As the assessor, you want to stay on script as much as possible, but if you need to give more context and believe the client needs more context, you can go off script. So if they don't understand, so for instance, let's go back to get familiar with the questions. If you're asking, are you currently able to take care of your basic needs like bathing, changing clothes, using the restroom? If someone is saying, well, I can go into a shop and wash my hair there, their basic needs really aren't getting met at that point. They may need more information or may need more clarification on that. And so you can look into that, and if you need to ask a question, of course, you could say, okay, let's give you more information on this. When I'm doing them in person, I really like to maximize my eye contact when I'm doing the script and then minimize my eye contact when I'm doing the assessment. I feel like that allows for less judgment. If you're looking at somebody when you ask them questions about if they exchange sex for money, run drugs for someone, have unprotected sex with someone you don't know, they're probably, or it could allow for some people to feel uncomfortable while answering those questions. So really kind of looking at the paper, or if you're doing it on a computer, to be able to do that will allow, I feel like, for a more honest assessment. Also, moving on quickly to the next question. Of course, like I said, it should only take about 7 to 15 minutes. So just moving through quickly through those, and that also allows for a no judgment zone. So after the assessment, there are some follow-up questions on here. These are really good for like if you're going out into the field, if you're doing, if you're out looking at, if you're in a shelter, you're probably going to see these people more regularly with like the position that I'm in. People walk in or I get phone calls. It's really good to know, hey, where are you going to be? Where's the easiest place to find you? What time am I going to best catch you? What's a great time to call you? Or, if they're working. those types of things. Those questions are already on the assessment, so you won't have to come up with them unless you think that they're necessary. So, but there's also a question on there, can I take your picture? That's just for, you know, you're going to see a lot of people. That way you can identify them if you see them out or if you go looking for them. Of course, if it's in a shelter, you'll probably see them more frequently. You'll want to get their email and phone number, that, of course, to follow up. You'll also want to tell them, hey, you know, if your phone number is going to change, your email is going to change, make sure to follow back up with me. That's another thing, that if their household changes, you want them to follow back up with you, so that if they did a single VI-SPDAT and they have a child, they're pregnant and they have a child, then of course they can come back and you can do a family assessment with them. If you feel like you need additional training, you can go to orco.com, and I attached 2 videos there. One is for the single adult training and one is for the family training. In general, I would recommend you going to orco.com. They have a lot of great information on homelessness, a lot of trainings on there, a lot of resources, and they have webinars. It's just a really great website to go to. And I see that I went through this really, really quickly, so I apologize for that. But are there any questions or concerns or comments? Okay, I'm trying to look at the chat here.
So it looks like Stefan has a question. He asks, what are your thoughts on persons in Kentucky relapsing back into homelessness?
So that also, I'm glad that you asked that question. So one, I would recommend you listening to Ms. Cassie's coordinated entry presentation that she did. So what this is really to help look at these people's needs, those experiencing homelessness, to help minimize housing instability. So the purpose of this assessment is to help say, hey, what are your needs? Where you need to be met at, so that they don't relapse back into homelessness. Of course, it's going to happen sometimes, but that's why it's really good to do this assessment. It's really good to have an understanding of this assessment and how important it is for people to not relapse back into homelessness. So they're scored on different levels for programs. And one could be scored with the permanent supportive housing or with rapid rehousing. And I know that may not mean a lot to you if you don't know what those mean yet, but it's to look at, hey, do you need more intensive case management after you've been assessed and have housing? Or do you think, you know, you just need that push before to kind of get going? So really the purpose of this assessment is to help people not go back into homelessness and to avoid that housing instability, to say, what can we do after we get you housing with your housing first approach to be able to minimize that and do the things and resources after they're housed to prevent that. I hope that answered your question.
This is Cassie with HHCK. So obviously I agree, Jenny. I think, you know, the overall purpose of coordinated entry is to avoid people returning to homelessness. And that's data that's collected as well. So we always collect data through HMIS on our reports that get sent to HUD, showing the amount of people that have gone through the system and returned to homelessness. In Kentucky as a whole, like if you see that a lot of people are returning to homelessness after going through the coordinated entry system, we're going to get less funding each year when we're applying. So I think something that's very, very important is making sure that your agency has supportive services for people once they're housed. So really good intensive case management, specifically housing focused case management, and making sure that you're completing home visits. Obviously, it's a weird time and it's like really difficult to provide good supportive services right now. But typically, if you can like go to people's homes and meet them where they're at, rather than like them having to always come to the office, making sure you're maintaining good communication with them, asking them what they need from you, just establishing rapport, all those supportive services and case management are going to really help with avoiding return to homelessness. And then obviously as well, if somebody does return to homelessness, they can go back through the coordinated entry system to be housed again. We can do a new VI-SPDAT with them, get them back on the list. It's not like if they go through it and they're evicted, that means they can't do it again, or it like makes them not eligible. So the purpose is, even if somebody does get evicted or returns to homelessness, coordinated entry is still an option for them. Whereas some other things like Section 8, it might make them ineligible if they've been evicted too many times, or if they're failing to pay their portion of the rent.
We have another question too. How would you help someone who has relapsed on drugs and it causes more issues with housing?
Well, we see this very frequently, I will say that.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So if somebody relapses, is the question, and they lose their housing? What was the?
It just says, how would you help someone who has relapsed on drugs and it causes more issues with housing?
More issues with housing, okay.
So I guess you could answer it, maybe they are like close to being evicted, or they are gonna be evicted.
Right. Well, yeah, this happens very frequently with our permanent supportive housing clients. I think it depends on the individual and what they need. So a lot of times we'll try to get someone into like an actual inpatient treatment, if there are any available. And then something we can do is we continue to pay their landlord, and they can return to their home afterwards. So I think it's a lot easier for people to have a reason to go to treatment, knowing that like, hey, your home is safe. We're going to be here right when you get out to help you. Like, you can call us the day that you get out of treatment. We'll be there. We can drive you home if we need to. I think just making sure that they know that they're not going to be like left alone or lose their housing immediately outside of, when they get done with treatment is always really helpful. And then also, if you can get, like, we have some clients that like, they don't want treatment, so you can't force treatment on people. But I think it's really helpful if you can refer people to places that'll like do an online assessment with them or come to their home first to talk with them is always really helpful as well.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
I have a question. I would love to hear from Jenny or Kathy or both of you, like why do you guys like personally believe in the VI-SPDAT and housing first? Like why do you, agree with it? Besides like, it's evidence-based and all that, but like why do you think it's a good model and tool to use?
I can go first. I think because I don't really know how we can expect people to work on their mental health if their basic needs aren't being met first. Like, if you don't have a place to live, you're worrying about what you're going to eat, how you're going to stay warm, all these kinds of things. Where are you going to sleep that night? Every single day is like an extreme struggle for you, just to get by. And lots of times that people do fall into addictions is just to make it day to day. And so I just think it takes a huge load off people to have a safe place to live, and not to have to worry so much about, somebody stealing their belongings at night, or just meeting their, day-to-day needs is so difficult. So housing someone first, it takes so much of that stress off them that it allows them to really focus on the next steps that they want in life, you know, whether it's treatment or getting reconnected with family, mental health support, whatever it is. Oh, and then the VI-SPDAT. I think the VI-SPDAT is really good because it is evidence-based. There's a lot of input from people who have experienced homelessness that goes into the VI-SPDAT. So a lot of the questions that are asked on there are from, you know, people saying like, these are the things I struggled with. These are the kinds of questions you need to be asking people. It's not just a bunch of providers thinking, you know, what they think they should ask. It's got a lot of actual client input in it.
Yeah, building off what Cassie said, it's kind of looking at, hey, these are the things that aren't really talked about with other type of housing or that disqualifies them from housing. So it's saying that's why it's really important to prep and say, hey, this doesn't disqualify you. This is actually, we need the real information because you're taking real information, real lives, and really what they're going through, the true and authentic things that these people are going through, that we can say, okay, well, based off of that need, let's put you where you need to be. Let's look at your needs and help based off of that. So it's really allowing to look at an individual and say, I'm going to help you versus, I'm sorry, you're not qualified. It's really allowing to be able to serve more people and in a way that isn't just a list. You know, I love the fact that it's a prioritization list, looking at the needs. And I just think that's really important on housing people and allowing them to continue to be housed, along with what Cassie was saying with the case management afterwards. It's just a really good tool.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I still have another question, though. I know this work is really challenging and, you know, it's a really vulnerable population. So I think it would just be beneficial for members to hear, like, how do you take care of yourself and, like, avoid, you know, becoming burnt out or, like, mitigating burnout and then, like, not becoming jaded from working with this population over and over again?
I think it's really important to be able to separate it. It sounds so harsh, but to be like, this is my job, and then I have my personal time, because you're dealing with people's lives, and that can feel really personal. But understanding that you can only do what you can do. So if at the end of the day that you can say, hey, I did all that I can, or I answered all the questions, or I did what I thought the best I could do, then being able to separate that and having your own self-care, stepping out of that, and not, you know, feeling like it's on you. So for my self-care, like I liked reality TV. I like to decorate, and I makeup. So it's really fun to kind of do those types of things and to have your own separate. You need to really, I think it's really important to be able to separate your service from your own time and to really have a cutoff at that time and give yourself breaks and understand that everybody isn't going to be housed and everybody may not get all the services, and you may not be able to help everyone that walks through the door, but if you do everything that you can, to feel good about that and to do what you can do.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of that. I think this is a great question because it's something that is so hard to balance in this line of work. So something for me, yeah, is definitely having like strict boundaries with yourself. I think is really good, just with your time. So if I leave the office, like I don't think about work, I don't talk about work. I really kind of cut it off, and that's what helps me the most, I think. And then obviously, yeah, anything you can do as a form of self-care, whatever your hobbies Or just make sure that you make something else that I think is good. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry, Cassie, it's Holly. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Something else that's really good is having someone that you can vent to, even though, like, obviously, you don't want to make a habit of venting about work and complaining and feeling like that. But I think having like a safe person that you feel really comfortable with, or having set aside time to like vent frustrations at work, things like that can be helpful. Let's see. Also, I think being careful when you're talking to clients, like recognizing what kind of mindset you're in. Like if you're having a really frustrated or like off day, you're really struggling, you might not be in the right mindset to talk to clients, or you might just need a break or something. So I think being careful, like if you've answered, 5 calls in a row or something and you're getting really exhausted and burnt out emotionally, I think it's good to definitely take a break and step away if you need to, or if, it might just be better to return someone's call when you're just in a much better mindset to speak with them. So it can definitely.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're
So you mentioned boundaries, and so I just wanted to ask both of you, what helps you, or like what do you think of, like when it comes to making sure that like you set healthy boundaries with the clients and the individuals that like you're talking to?
I think you should be up front at the beginning of what you can help with them with and what you can't help them with, and give them specific examples, like I'm here to help you with your housing and anything related to your housing. I'm not going to drive you to buy cigarettes from the store, or things that lots of times people might ask for or think that you can do for them that you can't do. And it's not, it's not a professional relationship to do those types of things with your clients. So yeah, just being straightforward. If you're like a case manager, even giving them like a printed out list of like your role, what you're there to help them with, and then things that you're not capable of helping them with as well.
Thank you.
I agree. And then also cutting it off from work to home, really the boundary of, okay, don't check your email. Turn it off. Don't ding on your phone. If you want to look at it, that's fine. Don't reply. Just turn it off. Just turn it off. It really helps. Don't give out personal phone numbers. Anything like that. Allow it to really be a professional relationship.
One other thing related to boundaries with clients as well, make sure that they know your hours that you're available from beginning to end, and let them know, like, they can, I guess I wouldn't give out any like personal numbers. Don't text clients, kind of all the obvious things. You don't want to Facebook message clients. Something we've done at HHCK that was been helpful, if the sites that you're serving at will, allow it, is we created like a Facebook kind of HHC case manager page that we can use to reach out to clients if we need to, if that's going to be the only possible way that we can get in touch with them. So just being careful with social media, especially.
Thank you. Those are all great and helpful tips.
Wait, I have one more.
I
Okay.
have a question.
Oh, wait, doesn't a member have a question, actually?
Yes, Gabrielle, I don't know if you all can see me or hear me. Can you?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, I'm doing it from my iPhone, so I'm sorry if you can't see me. I tried to work this thing. I'm not too good at it. I'm new. Well, for those that I've maybe not been in the meeting with, this is my first year service, and I am a member at the site Georgetown at Elizabeth Village, case management. And my question right now is, someone just brought up about ways of contacting, maybe like after hours or whatnot. are we allowed, or am I allowed to, because outside of my personal cell phone number, I also have a Google Voice number that's connected to my personal cell phone number, but it doesn't show my personal cell phone number. Am I allowed to give the residents or the clients that number if they happen to need me outside of the service hours?
Yeah, this is Caitlin. I think that is a great way, if it's necessary, to maintain those healthy boundaries and like avoid any, things that might come up, like in the best interest of you and the clients that you're serving. So yeah, Google Voice is definitely something that we would recommend.
Okay, because of course, like I said, I'm new to this. As you know, this is my first year, but I'm also kind of like that person that even though after you leave the Elizabeth Village, I still want you to know that I'm there for you, even if it's just for you to call me and say, hey, Gabrielle, I'm doing this now, or I achieved this, I met this goal, or, I'm still clean, or whatever it is. I don't want them to feel like their journey is over with me or my caring stops once they leave the Elizabeth Village. Because I believe that continuing support is a big thing with striving on through life, years on top of years on top of years
on. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely understand that. Yeah, and I think Elizabeth has like maybe their own system of how they do like aftercare, I think they call it. But yeah, I was actually going to recommend Google Voice because like some sites are able to provide like site phones or whatever, but I know it's not an option for every site. So if you need to get in touch with a client, Google Voice is a great option. But it's not an expectation, and like if you're not comfortable with that, like we don't expect that or require it of members.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question.
Great. Okay, my last question, hopefully, sorry, Cassie and Jenny. But I think it's helpful for them, or not them, sorry, the members to hear from you all just because you have worked in this field a long time. But since this is a helping profession, and I think a lot of our members are drawn to the field because they want to help, but can you talk about why it's important to not try and fix everything or do everything or be everything for your clients, and try not to tell, clients how to do things or what they should do? Because I think some people tend to think maybe they know what's best for clients and that you maybe would make a different choice if you were in their situation, but just avoiding telling people how to do things or, trying to be everything. Does that make sense? Those kind of a lot of questions wrapped up in one, but.
You're not superhero. You literally cannot do everything. And you have to understand that. You have to understand that you have your own set of skills. And for a lot of you, that may be compassion. You can give that, and look into yourself and understand just what you're able to give. And I know that's pretty redundant, but just understanding that, I don't know how to word this other than you're not going to fix everyone. I think that being able to say that, I don't know, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But if you were to think about yourself in that situation, in any situation, you really don't want to be told what to do, because you do have decisions and you're allowed to make your own decisions in your own life. So on to that question about not steering people into, where they want to be. If you take in consideration that some people have different traumas than you, or different thought processes than you, or different likes than you, then you can understand that maybe this place that you see to be really good, like on a housing search, if you see it to be really good for maybe you, that may not be their ideal. Actually, I just got off the phone before I did this presentation with someone who said, I don't want to go to a shelter. I'd rather sleep outside. And you have to respect that, and you need to be respectful of other people's opinions, other people's choices, because you would want that also. You would want other people to respect, to not tell you where to go, what to do, how to be, and just take that into consideration with other people and the people that you're serving.
Yeah, I would just add, I think just always trying to start with asking people, what do they want? What do they need first before assuming anything. Even when, someone's still experiencing homelessness, we should be asking them, like, why are you here? Like, do you want housing? Is that why you're here? Like, you never want to assume what somebody needs help with. And I think as many questions as you can ask, just to get people to open up to you and to understand how things can affect them. So like something we do a lot at HHCK is if somebody's making a decision that could affect their housing, we'll just ask, like, do you understand it? Like, how could this affect your housing by you doing this? Or like making sure that they understand that it's a lease violation and what that could cause. Sometimes people, they don't understand that something they're doing could cause them to get evicted. But yeah, that can be really hard and it can be really frustrating. And it kind of goes back to what I said about substance use is we have a lot of clients that struggle with substance use, and some of them really don't want treatment. They don't want to go to an inpatient treatment. And I think that's why it's good to just explore as many options as you can, make as many community partnerships with agencies as you can, so that way you have options and you can help people meet their individual needs and their individual wants.
I'd like to also add, like what Cassie was saying about treatment, with addiction. It's a lot easier to look at it in that stance, but you could really apply it with everything. If somebody's not going to want treatment, it's probably not going to be, they're not going to take it in very well. So pushing somebody onto a place or into a shelter or this, then you're not helping their housing. The housing instability is not being helped. So if that's not what their goal is, then that could cause them right back on the streets. Not that would be directly because of you, but it could be a cycle because of that, because that wasn't what their goals were, that wasn't what their needs were. And so that's why it's so important to look at each person client-centered and based off them and not have it as a generalized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Caitlin had mentioned making sure, how do you kind of balance not doing everything for someone. I think that, that's something that you've just got to be pretty straightforward with people up front about, going back to kind of what I said of what things, what you're there to help them with, just keeping them focused on like what your purpose is and what you're doing, whether that be housing or whatever it is.
Thank you so much. I think we have another question. What are options for persons that want to be homeless? I ask this because cities frown on homelessness.
The only way that I would know how to answer that would be to stop the stigma, to help educate people that, educate landlords, educate agencies that are saying, I'm talking in their words, which I don't mean to be like this, but there's somebody out there, they've been sleeping on the streets, we need to get them a place, they need to go somewhere, you need to help them. Those types of things, it's really, it's not their place, it's not our place. We could go offer help, but just back to what we were saying, As far as that, I ask this because cities frown on homelessness. We need to talk about it more. We need to educate, and we need to give understanding and compassion to allow people to understand that they make decisions, and so do those. Every person can make their own decision in what they feel to be for their lives. But really stopping the stigma and educating, I think, is great.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think something else that can come up with that is lots of times people who do want to be homeless, you know, they're obviously typically chronically homeless. They've been on the streets for years. They may or may not have some severe mental illnesses. But a lot of times those people get criminalized a lot. They end up in and out of jail. And they might be sometimes a danger to themselves or to other people. So obviously you don't want to like, continue to try and like force housing on someone. But there are sometimes, depending on where you're located, there's outreach teams specifically for mental health and things like that. I know that in Lexington, I believe New Vista does like outreach for that kind of thing as well, where they'll take like somebody who's a nurse, somebody who is a counselor, you know, it'll be just kind of like wraparound services. And then they can figure out maybe, you know, together they can collaborate and figure out what somebody needs or what they want.
Also,
go ahead.
sorry. Along educating others, I think also educating yourself to give resources to those that are homeless, just along what Cassie was saying, the resources for the case management, the resources for outreach teams, doing all that you can for that specific instance.
I was going to add that I think I don't want to word this wrong, but I think there are a lot of systems in place that keep people from getting housed. Cassie touched on this with like high barrier shelters, and shelters often have a lot of rules and, you know, things you have to follow or else you get kicked out. Some people can't get into shelter or stay in shelter, or they're banned from shelter. And I think that's why, I mean, I personally believe in the housing first model is it gets people into housing, and that's ultimately the goal. We're not trying to prolong it or keep people in it. And so, yeah, and if people choose to be homeless, I mean, everyone has their own autonomy and the ability to make decisions for themselves, but I would implore people to think, like, is it really that people want to be homeless, or they don't want to have to meet everyone's expectations and follow all these rules and become housing ready, the perfect model of somebody that deserves housing. So, because that's not a thing. Everyone deserves housing. You didn't earn it. It's not a privilege. It's not a reward. Okay, I'm done with my soapbox. Thanks.
Hello, this is Stephen Collins. I really do appreciate the input. And the reason why I asked this question is because I live in Newport, Kentucky. It's right across the river from Cincinnati. And as of recently, there was a homeless population that used to live under the overpasses. And those populations have been relocated. I want to say that one of the maybe the nice things about having some of these neighborhoods under the overpasses is that they're easily accessible to persons that want to help, and these persons they live there. This is where they constantly congregate, and so having these populations dispersed. Well, now how do you get to those persons? So this is kind of why I asked the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think that's also where, I mean, the more like street outreach you can have, the better, because that happens so frequently where like people are told to move by law enforcement, emergency management, whoever, you know, they it's hard when they're used to staying together and having their own community to have to move all the time like that. And if they are working with anyone, a housing provider or anything, I think street outreach can just be really helpful with maintaining communication with people who don't want to go to shelter. And as you mentioned, are often having to disperse and relocate.
Thank you.
Something else to add about Northern Kentucky, a while ago, I'm trying to think, yeah, I think it was just earlier this year, sorry, it feels like it was 5 years ago. Covington wanted to put a lot of ordinances in that would have made it really hard for shelters to serve people experiencing homelessness. There was like location restrictions, they couldn't have bike stands, like all this ridiculous stuff that I think would have made it really challenging for, you know, organizations to actually operate. So I think that's like another issue across, you know, not only Kentucky, but in this country, is that there are these ordinances and laws that get put into place that are designed, like not necessarily intentionally, to keep people from being adequately housed. And I wasn't trying to like argue with you about your question. I thought it was a great question. I was just giving my 2 cents.
Oh, thanks. So going back to Cincinnati, right, those persons did get relocated. And so quite naturally, they migrated across the river. I want to say Covington saw a spike in their population because of the migration across the river. And then Covington tightened up their laws, therefore forcing persons to move to Newport. So, yes, although our neighbors across the river got rid of their homelessness issue, and I believe to state it that way, those persons still exist, and now they live on our side of the river.
I know, and when I hear that, I just think, what if we just got people into housing? And then it wouldn't be, you know, people wouldn't have to come up with all these, you know, rules, and people, you know, cities wouldn't be bothered by this or whatever it may be. And I know it's not always as simple as just getting people into housing. Like, there are other things that need to happen just like structurally for that to work. But yeah, that's my philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think if there aren't any more questions or any more comments, I guess we'll give about a 5-minute break and then we'll get started on housing searches. Does that work, Jenny?
Yep.